Perfection is just a prettier word for fear. Waiting for silence before I start. The cursor is blinking. It has been blinking for exactly 42 minutes. It is a steady, rhythmic pulse on the stark white expanse of the screen, taunting me with its relentless demand for something, anything, that justifies the time I've already burned. My tea has gone cold. There is a film on the surface of the liquid, a dull, oily iris that reflects the blue light of the monitor. I should pour it out. I should get up, walk to the kitchen, rinse the mug, and maybe make a fresh cup. But moving requires breaking the spell. If I move, I admit that I haven't written a single word. If I stay here, staring at the cursor, I am still in the process of writing. I am still a writer who is simply gathering my thoughts. It is a specific kind of heavy, this stillness. People call it laziness. They see the unwashed dishes in the sink, the pile of books collecting dust on the nightstand, and the project deadlines turning red in my calendar, and they assume a lack of discipline. They don't see the internal machinery grinding itself to a pulp. They don't see that I am not idle. I am exhausted from the friction of moving a mountain inside my own head. I am paralyzed by the ghost of the final product. Before I have even typed a sentence, I have already edited it. I have already anticipated the smirk of a critic, the indifference of a reader, or worse, the silence of someone whose approval I never asked for but desperately crave. I play out the scene, I finish the draft. I send it out. It is received with a lukewarm nod. The crushing weight of that lukewarm is what keeps my hands hovering, ghost-like, over the keys. It is safer to remain a potential genius who hasn't tried than a mediocre person who has been measured and found wanting. I remember once, as a child, building a tower out of wooden blocks. I spent hours stacking them, measuring the balance, terrified that if I added one more, the whole thing would collapse and prove that I wasn't as clever as I told myself I was. So, I stopped at the middle. I left the tower half-finished. I told my mother I was tired of playing, but the truth was that the tower was perfect because it was incomplete. Once you finish it, it becomes an object in the world, subject to gravity and judgment. While it's in my head, it remains untarnished. It remains brilliant. That's the core of it, isn't it? The fear that the output will never match the architecture of the idea. I check my phone. There's a notification, a friend asking if I'm still coming out tonight. I don't reply immediately. I stare at the 3 dots of their typing indicator, then my own silence, then back at the blinking cursor on my laptop. I feel like a fraud. Not a big, dramatic fraud, but a quiet, suburban kind of imposter. I am someone who spends their life standing in the doorway, never quite walking into the room, terrified that the carpet might be stained or the lighting might be unflattering. Sometimes, I wonder what it would feel like to just be bad at something. To write a paragraph that is clumsy and flat, to let it exist, and to go to sleep anyway. To accept that the thing I make is not an extension of my soul, but just a collection of words on a page. But the stakes feel incredibly high, even when they aren't. Every unfinished task is a promise I broke to myself. Every hour of avoidance is a payment I make to the god of good enough. My back hurts. I slouch, leaning my forehead against the cool plastic of the laptop frame. I look at the window. Outside, the street lights have flickered on, casting long, orange shadows across the floorboards. Someone is walking a dog. I can hear the jingle of the leash. They are living a life that is messy, unedited, and happening in real time. They aren't waiting for the perfect conditions. They are just walking. I feel a pang of jealousy for that simplicity. I want to be the kind of person who doesn't hold their breath while they work. But the habit of perfectionism is like a second skin. It's tight, it restricts movement, and I've worn it for so long that I've forgotten what it's like to breathe without it. I look back at the screen. The cursor is still there. It hasn't judged me. It hasn't cared that I've wasted an hour. It just waits for input. The power is entirely mine, yet it feels like I am being held hostage. I want to blame the world, the expectations, the pressure, but it's just me. It's always just me, sitting in a dark room, waiting for a permission slip that will never come. Maybe the tragedy isn't that I never finish. The tragedy is that I spend my entire life preparing to start. I am a master of the warm-up, a specialist in the preamble. I know every possible outcome of a conversation I haven't had, and every potential failure of a project I haven't begun. My mind is a museum of things that never happened. The air in the room feels stagnant. I should open a window. I should let in some noise, some chaos, something that isn't under my control. But I stay still. I am waiting for the moment when I feel ready. And I know, with a clarity that borders on grief, that this moment will never arrive. Readiness is a myth sold to people like me to keep us quiet, to keep us waiting, to keep us safely trapped in the space between the intention and the act. I close my eyes. I can hear the clock ticking, a dry, rhythmic sound that marks the steady decay of the evening. I am losing the day, 1 second at a time. And yet, I am paralyzed. I am so afraid of leaving a mark that I choose to leave nothing at all. There is a comfort in this void, though. If I don't move, I can't fall. If I don't speak, I can't be misunderstood. If I don't create, I can't be judged. It is a lonely, cold, perfect existence. It is exactly what I deserve for trying to hide from the mess of being human. I open my eyes. The cursor is still blinking. I reach out and touch the key, then pull my finger back. Not yet. Not quite ready. Just a few more minutes of thinking. Just a little more time to make sure that when I finally start, it will be perfect. And outside, the night grows darker, and the world continues on, entirely indifferent to whether I ever touch the keys at all. I am alone with my potential, and it is the heaviest thing I have ever carried.